Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to SamanthaVLogan.com. Clearly, I'm Samantha V. Logan, and welcome to my site. I made it. I'm very proud of it, and today I'm going to teach you how to make one. I receive a lot of employment doing a lot of graphic design and a lot of web development because my main source of income is online community management. In order to make an online presence in an online environment where people are attracted and want to stay to develop a community. That means that a website needs to be attractive, capable, and fulfill business needs. So today, I'm going to teach you how I do it. This is definitely an overview. It's not a lot of information, but it is going to be a long video. So I am extremely excited to announce that we are going to be doing this with an actual website, an actual company with my friend Randy Gaffner, who created AwakenCreativePotential.com. Now, this is a makerspace website based off of his book, Zen and the Art of Making a Morris Chair. So we're going to start by going over the site, what the problems are, and then we're going to start from ground up, mission, value, structure statement, all the way to creating a site web that will allow you to plot the website for any site creation surface you like. So here we are looking at the site. First, I want to apologize for the audio being a little bit distant. I had to use a completely different mic for this simulcast situation. You know how it goes. Let's just get into it. First, right off the bat, this is already a great improvement. A week ago, when I told Randy a whole bunch of improvements he can make to his site, one of the biggest ones I had was the visceral aspect of his brand, Awaken Creative Potential. It's a makerspace. And here you can suddenly see that. People baking, people making pottery, people making stone walls. But you'll also see there's a lot of green, a lot of yellow, and gray doesn't exactly stand too well across that. And you'll see that we have two buttons. Click here to say, hey, immediately asks for information. That's a bit of a problem. But then there's also more about ACP, and it's here where things start to go a little interesting. Awaken Creative Potential's brand is red, green, orange, and yellow. That's a lot of color. That's a lot of vibrancy. That's a lot of busy. And against this very neutral green, it just does not work. Then it says, meet your creative spirit on a path to self-discovery. But just above it, it says, your hand is a way to work-life balance. So what is it? We're getting a lot of messages here. We're getting a lot of statements. And I thought we were being introduced to Awaken Creative Potential. So who is Randy Gaffner? Randy is a wonderful guy who made a great book, but this site should not be about him. It should be about the movement he is trying to create. What I want to do is I want to click on this About page because this is where it gets a little bit interesting. You see, I built a chair. I rebuilt my life. This is what Awaken Creative Potential started. A really great, powerful, emotional story. Consider making my hand. There's the thesis. There's the goal. But then, Randy, now there's another autobiography and then what seems to be some blog content. This is a lot of content. And further, it's talking about academic research as opposed to the emotional impetus of the story that he's trying to tell. So there's a big tonal and a big content problem on the site. There's a lot going on and he's trying to accomplish a lot of goals, but it's not happening in a structured, capable, intuitive way. Let's take a look at his blog. And we see the same issue. This orange and this black is absolutely gorgeous. And I would recommend stealing this visual property, by the way. Everything else, all of these images and these blogs are a little bit distant and away from you. I'm sure this is fantastic content. He's a great writer. He's a great filmmaker. He's got a lot going for him, but the visual design is conflicting with it every step of the way. So in creating Randy's site, what is going to be step one? We're going to start with the mission and the goals of Awaken Creative Potential. Randy's statement as he was talking about his business was full of emotional impetus, values when it comes to creating things with your hands, finding a specific peace and tranquility and understanding about life that's connected to the physical world. That is a beautiful statement, but it sounds a little new agey to me. In a lot of ways, Making a site is about putting forward the best possible rhetorical and visual strategy for your brand. How are you going to explain to the person who's looking at your site within a matter of 6 seconds why they should care? So instead, I rephrased Randy's mission. The mission of Awaken Creative Potential is to bring together people who understand what it means to make things with their hands and receives a sense of benefit and community from that activity. It's to give everyone a place to share what they can make and communicate about this wonderful creative potential in modern human life. That's a very powerful statement, a very powerful mission. Let's make a site out of that. What form of rhetorical values and emotional impetus do we want to portray to the people? In that mission statement, we represented a specific connection. So it may be an important value for us to consider the freedom of individuals to share what they want. That tells us a lot about what a community is going to look like. But it's also important to recognize that the main purpose of this site is to make him a thought leader in the makerspace community. There's also the gigantic ecosystem of makerspace communities to consider. On YouTube, there's Tested, there's Michael Cthulhu, there's a bunch of people making knives and benches and chairs of their own all over the internet. So what's special about his site that is going to bring Awaken Creative Potential to the forefront of the makerspace movements? We are looking to create a platform where blog content allow people to understand the world around them. Not just we want to make a cool knife or a cool axe or a cool chair or a cool bed. And it's in that respect that we can start to move the site a little bit more toward a connection rather than just an item you'll be making with them. So with this in mind, I created 3 main goals. You always want to have a primary, secondary, and tertiary goals. These are going to be at the very bottom of your content funnels, your value funnels. Every funnel you are going to make for your marketing will have these 3 goals. Randy's got a lot of goals, as he should. A site is a really great place for that. Sites are supposed to be landing pages for anything and everything you. That means they can have 100 different funnels going at the same time. But start with 3, because if you do any more than 3, you're probably going to overstep your boundaries and create a lot of problems. We'll get to that in later steps as they start to fill out. So the primary goal of this site is to make Randy a thought leader in the makerspace community, an influential person who is making things by hand and explaining why it's important. Second is to get people to experience things with him and explain the visceral responses that they're having. This is where the community aspect comes along. And third, as with most businesses, it's always got to turn a profit or reduce costs. So his tertiary goal is going to be selling his book. All of those values should be reflected on every single page. Now that we've looked at the values, we've looked at the mission, and we've looked at the goals, we can now create one homepage that represents all 3 of those goals, and then homepages for each goal. So what you're going to do is you're going to create something called a site map. Site maps are the beginning and end of this entire process. Essentially what it is a list in your greatest possible world view. What pages do you ultimately want to see on the website? And you're essentially going to go through and list them, first with the headers of the page, then the subheaders of the page, then major overarching content. Don't get too specific in this set. We are just creating a map for what is necessary on your site. This is Randy's. I went ahead and modified it a little bit in order to reflect a sitemap that I would typically want to see. We're not looking for all of the technical here. We're looking for the ideal and the mission, vision, value, and goals. Now that you have the sitemap, this is where the fun part happens. So what you're going to do is you're going to find a really big surface. In my office, I normally have a whiteboard, but I'm in Texas for an internship, so I don't really have that. So I get to use this really big, handy dandy, unfortunately reflective window in order to create something called a site web. Essentially what it's going to do is it's going to fill out the 3 funnels for the multiple goals that we have, and then start to create connections. And by the end of it all, we're going to have an entire web for all of the pages you need, the transitions from those pages that you have, etc. We have a bit of a crafts project. I recommend picking a surface that is in the middle of your office, if you're in an office, and get everyone involved in this. You're gonna create half pages for your homepage and each homepage for your goal. For instance, we have a shop because we need to sell Randy's book. We have a blog because that's what's going to make him an influential thought leader. We have an about page for him, and of course this isn't gonna be a huge deal. And then we have the homepage. Now we're also going to include a community forum, but I recommend putting that into a parking lot. Definitely have half a page set off to the side, but that's its own beast. You're gonna need to create that once you have a solid understanding of the content side of your site. So what you're going to do is you're going to start with your home page, and it's going to go right smack dab in the middle. And don't write anything on it yet. We're going to write something about it. This is going to be the format of the page, but we're not there yet. We're focusing on content. Then you're going to have each funnel page system essentially posted like a web on each portion of the window. And once you have that done, now what you're going to do is you're going to grab a bunch of post-it notes. I would prefer several different colors, and you're going to assign a color to each post-it note. First, we're going to focus on goals. So I'm going to have blue for goal 1, I'm going to have orange for goal 2, green for goal 3. Once you have the goals, this is essentially a content set, and you're going to go through your site map and you're going to put them all on here as a web, so a post-it note for each element. Once you have it, you know what all goes on the page, and then you can begin to format how you're going to lay out all of those elements on the page. Now there are a few additional elements called a transitional, which basically is a button that allows you to move from one page to another. You should always have one of these, and we'll explain that in a little bit. I've selected yellow for that. Another element is you're going to have external pages. This means your social media icons, etc. Keep in mind that you always have an ecosystem. For Randy, it's going to be an ecosystem that has to do with Pinterest and DeviantArt. It's going to have to do with all of the social sites that he's going to need to be active in, but also his competitors and the promotional areas. I have a really handy map that'll allow you to go through all of those, and I can probably talk about that in a later video. For that, I have pink, and then I have blue just for random notes. So for this, I'm going to do a time-lapse video, and as we're talking, we are going to bring up the topic of bouncing as we're proceeding through all of this. While we're watching me do all of this, I'm going to talk a little bit about one of the biggest issues, the biggest problems that occurs in any website. And this is very much so the reason I said you should only have 3 priorities the first time you are making a website. And it's the concept of bouncing. Before I do get into that though, there's going to be a few times I'm going to reference the actual video that we're watching, the time lapse. So definitely pay attention to it. Now, bouncing is the activity that most people do where you go from Facebook to email to website to Twitter to email to website to blog based on a variety of different meandering clicks. So the purpose of Facebook is to keep you scrolling down for hours. You'll see that I'm starting to do the note pages now. Facebook wants you on their site. You do not have the luxury of Facebook where you can expect them to be there for hours. It's just not going to happen. So they're going to bounce on and off of your site. And the trick is, how can you keep them inside of your ecosystem, your emails, your ads, your website, your blog, so that they get a little bit more understanding for you? At the same time though, you also need them to be hyper-focused. We have blogs and about pages and shops. So they contend with each other. They're both necessary parts of a site, but they contend. You do not want to create content that's intended to help your customer bounce between each of your different presences online in order to do anything else. And you'll see that I'm kind of zooming in a little bit here on the rest of it. You'll also notice that I have more blue post-it notes for priority 1 than I do post-it notes for priority 3. Because it's not about sales, it's about developing community by way of the blog. And that's a really, really important aspect. There's a funnel there that you don't want to impede with. Bouncing directly impedes your funnels. So kind of using the analogy of a basketball hoop, for instance, you want to make sure that there's a backboard, a place people click. And then no matter how many times it hits the backboard, it hits the rim, it hits the backboard again, the ultimate goal is to make it through that net. And if the ball is already headed through the net, if the customer is already well into your funnel, you do not want to affect them. You'll see here in about a minute, I'm going to start filling out the shop. And in the shop, all I have are product post-its. That is it. They are all green, and there is one transitional that goes from the shop to the community for those who aren't ready to buy yet. And there's only that one. You'll see I have that yellow. That's a hugely important part of bouncing. You're also going to be developing content over the course of several years from here on out. And all of that content is going to affect this very careful dialectical balance between your funnel and your bounce content. So always try to think of it as what's going to get the customer into a swish. And you're never going to get a swish, but you're going to get as close as you possibly can. Bounce content is really, really helpful for making sure you get the score. Now you'll see here that I've started to fill out the vast majority of the net, and I'd like to transition over. You'll see all of the different arrows. Starting from the home page, I have 4 different arrows going from the home page, and from every other page, I have 1 arrow going from the blog to the shop to the community, from the community to the about page, from the about page to the blog. This is really important. This is how transitionals tend to work. And I've just started on the ecosystem portion. This is going to be the last portion, and this is super important. This is going to be where all of the people are bouncing from. You're looking at a conversation prism. This is absolutely wonderful. It's a great tool. You can Google it. It's free. It's done by Brian Silas, and he's basically a web anthropologist who put all of the different blog posts into segmented portions for what it's special for. And this is where you start to build a community. This is called technological allowances theory. And I'll link another video for technological allowances on my socially constructed page, which is an entire channel on how to build a community.